Hi, I just recorded this, but I got interrupted, so I'm gonna do it again. This is not Yu-Gi-Oh! Related, so if you're subscribed to me just for Yu-Gi-Oh!, I would suggest, you know, not watching this. This is another D&D tutorial. Not really a tutorial. These are really DM tips. Things to help you get your immersion factor up in your games. Amongst other things. Just stuff to help your game. I'm going to be going through the first 4 or so a little bit fast because of the fact that I already did them, and that frustrates me. Give the players a little bit of what they want. I say this because of the fact that you don't want your characters to be stagnant. You don't want them to be static characters that never change, that don't change their opinions on anything ever. And they have everything that they want for their character right away. For instance, if you give a level 1 adventurer a +3 sword, then they don't need to adventure. You don't really need it if you get too much at the beginning. Yeah, because, again, I'm gonna mention my buddy who is a terrible person to have in your campaign. But, yeah, I gave him pretty much everything right away. It kind of was bad for the party. And I regretted it ever since. But, moving on. Get the character ideas first. And what I mean by this is tell them the setting, or have them tell you what kind of setting they want to be in. Sometimes that's important. And then, really help to hone those out in regards to the campaign world. You can do it in either order. So if you have a bunch of people that are really interested in like a steampunk campaign, run one for them. Run a campaign where they get to play steampunk characters. Now, that isn't to say that it dies when you get to the characters. Really, that's just the start. Once you have your characters made, then you need to know their motivations and things like that, and that's what the next 2 tips are really about. So, the first real tip I'm going to suggest, and I would not suggest this to starting DMs, only to DMs that have a party that wants story. So maybe mid to high level DMs, for lack of a better term. Have an enemy list and an allies list. For each character. Each character, at the start of the game, to help them hook into the world. A lot of the time, I have them pick 3 allies and 2 enemies. Whoops. 3 allies and 2 enemies. That way, they get to... Like, one of my characters had to explain why he was such a talented wizard, but... had no spell books or equipment. He wrote that into his story. He said something like, something the Sticky Hands, I think his name was, and it was just this gnomish thief that he saw running away with all of his goods, and he was never able to track it down. And, you know, that helps the story. Like, you could make a subplot out of that. You could make it so that enemy, you run into them in the bar, on a percentage die or something, and then he can get all of his items back. Same thing goes with allies. If you have, like, Brunard the Grey, and he's like a wandering knight or something, you could run into him on, like, a really high percentile die. Or you could run into him in a tavern, or, you know, the DM could write a plot about it, and, you know, incorporate what he's doing to claim his honor or something, and your character would be inclined to help with this. It just helps with the immersion factor. Now, the next one is really optional. This is good if you have new players. It's good if your players really want to roleplay, and it's just useful, for lack of a better word. Alright, and that is make each party member pick positive and or negative traits. For instance, mad scientist Stefan or something. And this mad scientist has the trait speaks out loud. You can give bonuses to, like, an intelligence score if they are playing their character, rewarding their role-playing. For instance, like you might give them a +2 to their checks if they're thinking out loud. You know, something like, "Ooh, I knew he was rotten. Now how do we get back to him? He has all of our gold. That poses a serious problem for transportation," etc., etc. It's helpful for letting the characters develop themselves. The next one I'm going to talk about is plot. Make sure your characters are tied into the plot. I've known so many starting DMs who didn't really do this. Like, they had no plot hooks, so the party wasn't really inclined to do what they wanted. You have to introduce, well, my personal style is I like to give them a lot of options. I created an entire campaign world for this, so it worked out well, but, you know, it's important that they feel intertwined with the plot, whether that be saying that they all start out as nobles, so you can have their fathers or their family members be killed and they are flown out on a blimp. Sure, doable. You just need to have a reason for them to want. And, you know, there's a lot of things you can do to get your group more entwined with the plot. Like, knowing their motivations is a really good way. I'm probably going to do an entire video on this. Just know that you need to think out the plot, but be flexible. So, if they dodge a plot hook, let the plot go in a completely different way. Say for instance, you have a player or players who want to, or that you want them to go to this temple of Athena or something and get the arrow of Athena, just, not creative at all and stealing from Battlestar Galactica, but say for instance you did that, and they decided that they would rather resort to a life in the city. Think up some city stuff for them to do. Guilds, stuff like that. You can send the plot in other directions, and, if they blow up your city, let it happen. Let it happen. Don't stifle their creativity. Because otherwise, it's just going to be another cookie-cutter role-playing game, and you're not really going to get that immersion factor. My sixth tip is don't punish creativity. Say, for instance, let's take something one of my players did last week in the campaign where I spent half of last video complaining about. They increased the radius of their shield without decreasing the output of the shield on the spaceship. So it cut the ship or the opposing ship in half. Now, that's good. They got all kinds of resources that they never used, just from that. Of course, that was about the time that the first guy fell asleep. Yeah, but not gonna bitch about that. And that was awesome. And I definitely gave them loot, they just didn't go get it. They had all sorts of salvage and scrap metal and things like that, that they had at their disposal, but it fried their shielding system because they didn't decrease the power output on the shield. Right, so, their shield was fried. It took too hard of a beating, and it just blew up. And that's where the other player got frustrated, but, there were options. They had spacesuits. They'd already seen them. They just weren't designed for human physiology. But they would fit. They would fit uncomfortably, but they would fit. Another example of this would be, for instance, if, I'm gonna take, one of my other D&D friends' finest moves, and from this day, he still carries a bag of flour in case there's the sign that there might be an invisible person. Let that go through. Even if it ruins what you had planned, if the enemy was supposed to be a challenge for the wizard, and this guy just happens to be in a market, and they just throw flour, yeah, sure, I'll allow it. Why not? Just let it happen. It means that you would always be able to just indulge your characters in their creativity. Or if they want to tie a rope around a guy's legs that they captured and, dangled them over the edge to increase their intimidate checks so that they could get the information, like the edge of a cliff, allow it. Why not? I mean, come on. Try to have a good time. A lot of the time, D&D groups get way too serious, or not serious enough. Like, there has to be a controlled amount of good time. If your party does like, joking and laughing, incorporating characters from, like, TV shows just as a joke, allow it. I mean, if that's your kind of group, then sure, do it. But if not, then you have to you have to stop the giggles at some point, and move it forward so that there can be more giggles. The next one is really hard for new characters. Don't be afraid to kill. New DMs oftentimes weaken out on killing their people. And I honestly think that if you want to do that, play 4th edition. Kind of a gripe that I have with 4th ed. You just can't kill characters. No matter how hard you try, you can't kill them unless you kill the entire party. But, yeah. Don't be afraid to, have a wizard that has, like, a force effect on a cliffside to just shoot them off the edge. If they were smart, they would prepare Featherfall. If not, they die. Simply put, it increases the immersion again. Immersion factor is really big, really key in D&D. Yeah, allow deaths. Definitely. Unless you're playing a low death one where, you're just trying to tell a story, then allow deaths. Rewards. Reward your players for doing something creative. It's just a good thing to do. They manage... here's another one from the guy who suggested to use flour to get invisible people. He was playing a D&D campaign, and he was playing some kind of wizard. Something that could lift 5 pounds. And he had to get in and steal the keys to the castle or something. But he was outside, and he could see it from the jail cell. Or he could see it when he looked into the jail cell. He avoided the entire dungeon by using a level 1 spell, the Ghost Hand one. It's not catching right now. But, it's a level 1 wizard spell. And, he was just able to it might even be cantrip, but he was just able to pass the entire dungeon by using it. You should allow that. In fact, you should encourage that. Like, when your D&D players throw you for a loop, don't just, give up and be like, oh, my plot hook didn't catch. Improvise. You can do it. I believe in you. Props. This is one that I've never needed. I'm not the hugest fan of props. Props only help when you have, a lot going on in the game. Using pieces and things like that to just amplify their visual awareness of what's going on is sometimes helpful, because every DM that's been poor has had to retcon things because people didn't understand what was going on what was going on in the battle properly. I suggest having a marker board, one that's dry erase, so that way you can just erase shit. They're like $20 for like a roll-upable mat, which is really great for preparing ahead of time. And, like, if you have, like, a big fake ruby at your house, and you want to give them a reward, that's supposed to seem epic, you can hand it to them, just, by physically handing them the gem and saying it looks something like this. You know, that's helpful. That's about it for this time. Rate, comment, subscribe if you like these videos and you want to see more. Definitely thumbs up. Comment below telling me what you want to know about if you're an up-and-coming DM. Tell me what I should have included, what other stuff I should mention in further videos, things like that. That would be helpful. You know, you can PM me if you want. I respond to those. And yeah, rate, comment, subscribe.